A very good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. I have the distinct pleasure of being in the company of what I would refer to as one of the learned gentlemen in Trinidad and Tobago, somebody who has been trying for numerous years to get common sense to prevail. As a young man, I did spend a little time with him while he was in the Senate. I had an opportunity to hear him, and I profoundly remember Mr. Robinson, the Prime Minister at the time, making a statement to both himself and Professor Kenny about how impressed he was about what they were offering. And I reflected on it over quite some time and came up with a very strange finding that although these people were respected, to date, very little of what they have contributed have ever been put into practice. So maybe I could start this conversation with you, Professor Spence, as asking you, as we look at 50 years, because you're by far my senior, and you would have known Trinidad and Tobago at a time before I was even born. I would ask you, how do you think this country has progressed from a point of view of its evolution relative to the resources that it has?
Let's take three areas, right? One is the energy sector and the economy. Second sector is education, and the third sector is agriculture. Because I think these three are extremely important facets of our development. I would say with the economy, we have done very well in exploiting our natural resources. We certainly have taken the oil and gas and monetized them in a way that certainly has brought us in tremendous income. So I would say in that respect, we have done well. Now, there's a flip side to that, another side to that, and that is because we have all this natural resource and this wealth, which is easily available. Really, we bring people in from outside, and they do the extraction, and then we just take the taxes. I know we have local participants and so on, but by and large, the capital comes in all this. So that's an easy way of earning income. But I think it has had the adverse effect of our not developing other sectors of the society, which would add to our income, and also which would replace oil and gas when they eventually
get to the diminishing point.
Yes, because in fact they're wasting assets. Well, not wasting, but non-renewable assets. Right? So I would say that we've done well in exploiting what we have, but we have not done as well in using those assets to put us on a development path which would allow us to be sustainable after the assets are exhausted. With respect to agriculture, I think that the decline in agriculture, and there's no doubt that there's been a tremendous decline, has been very much due to the fact that we had those assets of oil and natural gas. So there's another flip side. I know the present minister is making a big effort in agriculture, and I applaud him for that, but he really has a long way to go. Just to give one example, we exported 1 million crates of grapefruit at one time in Trinidad. Now we import citrus products. We don't produce enough for ourselves. That's just one example. And sometimes, even when we've done well, we have not done it the way we should. Let's take our rice production. The minister talks of the rice production. I think it's 30 million pounds a few years ago. But that big production came through exploitation of the Riva swamp.
Correct.
When it was pointed out that the environmental effects were
interfering,
not good, they had to stop that, and that was when the production fell down. So here was an excellent agricultural activity, because let's face it, they were fully mechanized. It was a very, I think it's one of the most interesting developments in agriculture in Trinidad for the last 50 years, because they really did well. But unfortunately, it was not planned properly in advance. Now I think you could have developed the river swamp so that you did not interfere with the environmental side of it, but also grew rice. but that wasn't done. Unfortunately, the girls went in, and the government hadn't planned in advance what to do if you were growing rice in that. We had programs before, both FAO and the Japanese had advised us about growing rice in the river soil. Anyway, so that's just an example of how sometimes we have good developments, but in the implementation, we aren't quite on the ball. One of the sad things about agriculture as well is the decline in cocoa. I mean, we produced 35,000 tons of cocoa in the 20s. We now produce 600. And the area that we use to produce the 600 is capable of producing 25,000. With modern varieties and modern methods of planting and so on, we could have a tremendous yield without any more land. But instead of producing 12, 30, 1,500 pounds of dry cocoa per acre, we produce on average for the country is 100 pounds, 15 times less, so that we are in a peculiar position of having the knowledge, having the skill, but somehow not being able to apply that knowledge and those skills in a way that will benefit us in the long run. And let's take education. There is no doubt that there is a tremendous increase in the availability of education from primary, now preschool, to university. The number of places in universities expanded tremendously. So that is a positive. Right? Now again, my problem is with the implementation. If you go back to the year 2000, when it was first decided that all children would go into secondary school irrespective of what they did in 11 plus. That was a positive and a correct decision that all kids should be educated up to 16. No doubt about that. Some shouldn't be left behind. Implementation. Before that decision, kids who didn't do well in 11 plus went into post-primary classes. So at least they learned to read and write. What happens now is, irrespective of performance, they go into secondary school, and many of those kids spend the next 5 years going through the classes and still not being able to read and write at the end of the day. Because when we changed the system, we didn't put in place what was needed to make up for what was being done in the old system. So the old system was not good because many kids couldn't get to go to secondary school. But at least they came out with a rudimentary education. Now, many of them go through secondary school without even that rudimentary education. And this may sound strange to say, but I myself place a lot of the responsibility for our present crime rate on that decision to send everybody into secondary school without preparation, because you have a large section of the population who can't read or write, and so their self-esteem is absolutely low. They hide it. They don't want anybody to know that they can't read or write, and so they substitute a gun for the prestige. Their prestige now is killing somebody. I'm told that to join some gangs you have to have killed somebody before. So you're not allowing them the opportunity to get prestige and self-esteem in the way that they should. So they go and divert it into these terrible, it's really ghastly now in Trinidad, and it has a multiplying effect. Because young people are killing each other, it then gets spread into the wider population. So adults kill each other. If somebody says something you don't like or mashes your toe, and you go home and get a gun and shoot them. It really is horrible at the moment.
In the present sense, you said Trinidad. Are you separating Tobago as being not as bad as Trinidad from a point of view of education? Do you think that they are better than Trinidad?
I'll give two answers to that. I rarely mentioned Trinidad and Tobago when I said Trinidad.
Okay.
However, since you raised the point, I think it is true to say that Tobago doesn't have the problems that Trinidad has crime-wise. Now, they have the problem that they haven't developed alternatives to the tourism industry in their case, the way that they should have done.
Correct.
So, and they also are dependent upon the surplus wealth.
The handout.
Yes, in Trinidad and Tobago. I think about a third of the population works for the
state,
yeah. So, yes, I think they're better off. I've always felt, however, that they could be even better, because you have a small island where the authorities should have complete control over the education system. and they should be able to do better.
Yeah, 50,000 people.
That's right. So they probably don't have quite the range of attainments that you have in Trinidad, where some are doing extremely well and some are doing extremely badly. They probably more fit into the middle, but they could do better.
If we look at the three things, and I want us to now take a little more in-depth focus, because I think we've set a good grounding. If we have to think of the three things, they're all interconnected when we look at a society in development or in transition. Trinidad and Tobago has to be considered still being in transition, because leadership of the country has not really invoked a totalitarian kind of acceptance of society to moving the country forward. There's always been this segregated development. Let's develop this side, or let's develop that side, let's develop this area, let's develop that area. Whether it's university education, whether it's tertiary education, whether it's secondary or primary, or even the schools, the early childhood. There is an ingredient that we haven't spoken about, which continues to be, I consider, the fulcrum that will make this whole process go, and that is what you call planning. Trinidad and Tobago now has a Ministry of Planning. I heard Dr. Botiwari speak very eloquently about what he wants to do, and I've heard other ministers of planning also speak, but his scope is broadened via today than it was many years ago. But we seem to continue to have an institutional planning deficiency in the way we want to grow Trinidad and Tobago. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Well, I would say that again, age comes into play to be aware of how the system has developed. Because remember, we had 5-year plans. There were 3 5-year plans, starting I think in 1960 and ended in 1965 maybe, and ended in the 70s when we had the first oil boom.
Okay.
But in those days it was very detailed planning. I had just joined the Ministry of Agriculture as a young man, and I was quite aware of the detailed planning, and certainly in the agricultural sector. So the first 15 years of independence, we did plan much more than we do today.
Money spoiled it.
Yes.
Because as the money started to come, we start worrying.
It is ironic, because when you have the money, you can develop your plans.
Yeah.
When you're planning and you have no money, you can't implement your plans. So when you have the money, how ironic that at that stage you should stop planning. So yes, I hope we develop it again. But the fact is that we abandoned planning in the 70s, whereas prior to that we had very detailed plans and systems for monitoring the implementation of the plan.
So you would say that under the Dr. Williams era, there was a tighter hold of the development of Trinidad and Tobago.
On the early part, remember the 70s he was still in power.
Yeah.
In fact, it was Williams who abandoned planning when we had the first oil boom in the 70s.
I see.
Williams was still in power.
So it is fundamental that a leader must really lead by institutional development, because if you say to me that Dr. Williams was the one that abandoned the plan, we have to say that the people that must have the plan has to be the new leaders today.
Well, yes, you're quite right that what we don't do well here is to build the institutions, so that it doesn't matter who is in charge. Our problem is that we rely heavily on the individuals, so that if you have good leadership, well, it's so in all parts of the world. There's no doubt that if you have a good leader, you're going to perform better than the job. The leader is not so good. But nevertheless, we are particularly poor in building our institutions, and it's institutions that carry on. Let me give an example from the education field, where I think we made a mistake. Although again on the surface it looks very well. We're working towards 60% of the population having tertiary education, and that's a pretty good stage to reach for any developing country. However, the way we have done it, in my view, has reduced the quality.
We have quantity.
The numbers were too big. UWI, for example, went from perhaps 5,000 to 17,000 in a very short space of time. Now, my position with respect to tertiary education is, when University of Trinidad and Tobago, UTT, was formed, they should have dealt with the numbers. And UWI should have been a postgraduate school, particularly emphasizing research. I read an article from someone in the US just a few days ago in which they were emphasizing the role of research universities, they call them. If the research doesn't come out of the university, right, then the private sector has nothing to build on. So whereas the private sector, be the pharmaceutical firms, one of the ones that developed the thing, it all goes back to research work in the university. Now, in order to push these 17,000 kids through bachelor's degrees at UWI, I think that what has suffered is research. You know, so again, an extremely good objective, important thing for the country, numbers, but we could have done it differently. I mean, they're now talking about COSTAT being upgraded. COSTAT should have been taken in numbers. UTT should have been taken in numbers. And UWI should have concentrated on research and postgraduate studies.
I think, again, we come back to the point of when we look at the whole institutional infrastructure, the problem again evolves around the, should I call it, misfortune of having money. You see, in the Trinidad and Tobago model, we could have gotten everything we needed. And in the family upbringing, when you could get everything you needed, don't worry. So we have kind of mirrored irresponsibly some of the development of the country without thinking of the future generations. Today, we are talking about the generation to come not being able to achieve the objectives that is expected of them. And that is only because the foundations were laid too small. If we are to look back now and take a microscopic view historically, we could say that it emanated from a lack of planning. We could say it emanated from having too many resources available to you, so you're at a point where you get stupid.
Which should not have been a problem.
Which should not have been a problem. Better to have too much than too little.
Exactly.
We could say that institutionally we stopped the checks and balances. Because if it was $10 short, somebody should take the $10. So we are now in the 2012 era, which is a whole new philosophical way. I saw the Prime Minister do something that I thought was very ingenious on her part, which is this new thing that she's bringing with regards to children getting the kind of rounded, if I call it, educational kind of model.
Extremely important.
And building that kind of unique civic mindedness in the society from the age that we are, because we can't think about people like you and me again. Wherever we have gone, we have arrived. But the younger generation, I think, has a good chance if this fosters, if this continues to be incubated and carried forward.
Absolutely.
But when we look at the present day situation of the university, I share your view and I agree with you that the university's capacity cannot really satisfy the physical numbers that is there in a qualitative side. And what maybe needs to be done, and maybe your views on this would be very important to share with the population, although you've said it already, but I think a little bit more detail, is do we go to the level of getting what I would call the cream of the crop? Because we have to definitely build a science-based society. We can no longer continue to build a hammer and chisel society. And not everybody in university is science-based. So if we were to look at that, can we then move this, if the university is already, can we get a higher level of a university? That's like what you're saying, the research university of the Caribbean.
It is very difficult to research something, to reverse something. Having built up to 17,000, very difficult to reduce it again. But you see, in a large country, let's take the United States, they have universities of 40,000 people. But they also have the Ivy League universities. They have Harvard and Yale and Princeton and
Good.
So they have their elite universities. In England, you have Oxford and Cambridge and St Andrews and Bristol, which are the top. Some years ago, Britain increased their university numbers for 100 extra universities. But those universities, some of them have come up and done well, but by and large, they are different to the ones that are really doing at the pinnacle of the research activity. So
there is still hope, though, for Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean at large to have an Ivy League kind of university now?
Well, we should do it through UWI. That was the advantage of having University of Trinidad and Tobago. So the technical university would be UTT. And
the Ivy League would be.
Yes. That's, and interestingly enough, Alistair McIntyre, before he became Vice Chancellor of the University, gave an Eric Williams Memorial lecture in that series some years ago. And he said just that. He said, I think what should happen in the Caribbean is that the individual national governments will set up a national university, and UWI will be the postgraduate. Yes, postgraduate. But unfortunately, I don't know why, but when McIntyre became Vice Chancellor, he didn't work towards that objective.
Oh, Lord.
He was part of the increased numbers. So I don't know why. He saw it before coming on board.
But he didn't follow through.
On board, he was too taken up with day-to-day.
Is there political involvement in university from one of you of its operation?
Not UWI. I regret to say that there seems to be in UTT, but not in UWI. Again, UTT was set up badly, you see. I was on a steering committee. And what we recommended is an independent board of governors, like the Ivy League University of the United States, where the board itself is self-generating. So if you select the right people to start with, right, then every year 2 people resign. And they remain, let's say there are 10 people on the board. 2 people retire. The remaining 8 select the 2 to replace them.
I hear you.
So it's self-generating at a high level. The critical thing there is what you start with. If you start at a low level, you have a problem.
Continue to be there.
But if you start, I've sat on international boards in agriculture, the International Institute, Seattle, in Colombia, and so on. And that's how it works. You
self-generating internally,
yeah,
because you're picking up here that is at least better than you or the same.
Yeah, that's right. In the UK, CAB International was like that. Well, I sat on both boards.
So we look at agriculture and we say that agriculture really, the present minister is making an effort, but he has a long way to go. We look at the cocoa as being one of the things that definitely has the capacity still to go because of the land that is already there, experience. We've seen the incentivization programs that have been put in, but we still don't see the drive.
So let me tell you what I believe should happen in cocoa. I was on 3 committees advising about cocoa. The first one was in 1992, when Dr. Rowley was Minister of Agriculture.
Right.
The second one was in 2002, when Mr. Rahel was Minister of Agriculture.
Wow.
The third one was last year. So every 10 years, this happened. And basically we made the same recommendation.
And nothing happened.
10 years, and nothing happened. But the last one was when Mr. Ken Gordon was head of the
Economic Development Board.
Yes, he asked us a group of us to look at cocoa. I mean, again, we made excellent, and not just academics. We had one of the leading businessmen in cocoa in Trinidad who owns a estate in the Central Range. Excellent, one of the best estates in Trinidad he owns. He's a businessman. He's not originally a farmer. He was on the board. He was on a committee.
Is the cocoa board a problem in regards to its growth?
Some of the growers think it's a problem and that the legislation should be changed. But I think there are other things that they go over which need to be addressed. I compare it to Point Lisas. Point Lisas would not have developed without government initiative, right? And then when it had been developed, government divested the private sector. And that's the way it should have been done. Those were in the days of Frank Ramazad when he was Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Finance. And he had the concept that government should go into areas where the private sector was not invested, develop the sector, and then move out, privatize and let the private sector come. And then government use that capital for other sectors that again the private sector is not going into. As is happening now, the private sector is not going into many areas.
But you see, the cocoa seems to really be one of the principal areas that the government they have done what they have done from a point of view of trying to energize it. But we still back to the same old square because maybe not enough research has gone into the aspect of it.
Not a question of research, and that's why I was comparing it to Point Lisas. What needs to be done in cocoa? This is what we recommend. You need to create farms, right? So the same way you build a factory shell, we saw the minimum acreage should be 20 acres, 50 acres. So you develop a farm of 50 acres, and when it comes into bearing,
sell it to somebody.
Sell the option to lease.
Sell the option to lease.
Okay? Don't give it away. It's not a handout.
Yeah.
Because government is
it's a value.
That's right. And the cost of establishing it to that stage should be what the prospective farmer pays.
Do we have the capacity at the university to go the downstream of cocoa? Meaning from a technological point of view, conversion and added value?
We have a young man there, Dr. Darren Suka, who is now getting international reputation for his work on flavor, which is the main thing when you're going downstream. Our big advantage in Trinidad is the flavor.
But with the new strain, we still have the flavor?
Yes, that's what they have been able to do. The importance of the new strain is high yield, disease resistance, and retention of the flavor.
And that was created in Trinidad?
Absolutely in Trinidad. The only successful cocoa breeding program in the world. I'm not talking about anybody in the world. And I'll tell you why. Most countries, a plant breeder comes for 5 years. Mainly they're from overseas, they're not from the country. And he starts a program. He goes, the next man comes in. He doesn't want to carry on that program. Starts over. Now in Trinidad, Edwin Freeman stayed breeding in cocoa in Trinidad for 40 years.
Wow.
Even when he retired, he was re-employed to still breed.
That's phenomenal information.
That's right. He got posthumously got a national award.
Right.
Well deserved, because he produced, and that is why I'm quite firm in saying it's the only cocoa breeding, successful cocoa breeding program in the world. In Trinidad and Tobago, and not by the university, by the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
Is it so?
That's right, by the government, and done by Freeman. But what are we doing with it? First of all, we let most of the original varieties go out to the rest of the world without copyright, without intellectual property thing. We are now trying to do the intellectual property thing, but we can't do it with the varieties already out. The new ones coming on. Well, what's the point in saving them with a production of 600 pounds? 600
Makes no
tons.
sense. Makes no sense.
600 tons is a waste.
In your estimation, how much hectares or acres would be required for cocoa to make it an industry type driven that could provide long-term jobs and all the things for this kind of industry?
10,000.
10,000 acres.
Hectares.
10,000 acres. And we have that land.
Yeah.
And that will be more in the northern range?
No, not necessarily. I mean, first of all, the central range is where the cocoa growing area. So we should start there. Certainly, expand there. But there are other areas. The one development that has taken place, unfortunately, with the collapse of CL Financial, I don't know what's happening now, but Dupree was in fact expanding cocoa production rapidly. He had bought 3 estates, one in Tamina, one in Central Range, and one in Maruga. And he was replanting. One of the mistakes we've made, and we continue to make it, it really is frustrated. You can't rehabilitate old cocoa.
No, you have
to replant.
Yeah.
And we don't.
It's not sugarcane.
Exactly. We don't understand that. We keep on doing it.
Yeah, it has its lifespan.
That's right.
And when it crosses a certain time, it can't do no more.
And there's certain measures that you would put in place. For example, we want to put URP into agriculture. I think that's the one thing that I disagree entirely with Minister Desires about. I don't think it's a good idea.
They don't have the capacity anyhow.
And you don't want to subsidize agriculture in that way.
Yeah.
You subsidize the end product when the thing is produced, if you have to, and you subsidize the interest rates, which they're doing.
They're doing that now.
I support that. But what you do is to arrange your plant in such a way. For example, you would leave roads in between. Let's say, so you can get a tractor with a trailer down, and you have cocoa. So no cocoa pod must be more than a certain distance from the road.
Yeah, of course.
You know, so you're reducing and the labor.
Yeah.
You know, in the supposedly late 40s, early 50s, Arthur Lewis put out a theory of industrialization to remove labor from agriculture. We are now going back to fear by putting URP and saying more labor on the land. We're going back to. He said, industrialize so you could take labor off and make the agriculture efficient.
Mechanized industrialized.
That's right.
Has to be.
The other day in the papers they made a report that they had harvested some cassava with a lifter, and the farmer was so pleased. You know, it was a tenth of the time and the effort that you would have to put in if you harvested it by hand. Just a simple device for pulling the cassava out of the ground with the tractor. You know, it's simple thing like.
Well, as you open up this conversation on that, where are we with cassava? Because I was looking at the African channel, and they're talking about a disease-free strain that they have created in Africa.
Yeah.
Are we using that in the Caribbean?
I don't know if we're using the African strain, but we get our strain from Colombia, because the National Institute I referred to earlier, CIAT, in Colombia, they're the center for cassava. So we get our new varieties from them. And I'm sure we get the best materials. We can get the best materials.
All right. So when we look at the whole issue of the agricultural side, if you had to sum it up, tell me one thing you think other than the money and then the planning. What else other than that went wrong?
Well, the previous owners of large estates. And you know, we talk about mega farms. We're talking about 100 acres of mega farm. That's a joke.
That's a joke.
5,000 acres is a mega farm.
That's a farm.
5,000. 10,000. What happened in the 50s and 60s is that the capital that was tied up in the larger farms moved out of agriculture. Right? And you're left with the small farmer, simple. No, I'm not in any way knocking small farmers.
No, small farmers are important.
Absolutely, and I think they've done a tremendous job. But mainly in vegetables. What people have to understand, and I think it's now being understood, if I have 1 acre of tomatoes, I can make a good living. If I have 1 acre of rice, the total amount is negligible, you know. So for rice I must have 50 acres. For tomatoes I can have 5 acres and I'll be well off. So what we haven't learned is that the size of plot depends on the crop you're growing.
Economy of scale.
Yes, or the livestock that you're rearing.
So if you look at the minister now, he said that he's published something. I haven't seen it. I've asked him to publish it in the papers. He's saying that he's going to, in the shortest space of time, maybe next 3 years, cut the food bill by $2 billion. He said he published the quantums and everything that is expected. Have you seen that document?
Yes, I've written 3 articles on it.
Is it achievable?
I don't think he'll cut the bill by $2 billion in 3 years. I don't think so. But that is not to say that I'm not glad that he's trying the way he's doing. Right? I think that's optimistic. The one thing that I keep on asking for, which I haven't yet seen, is again we talk about planning. We still don't know how much land there is available.
And now coming back to that question.
Until you know that, how can you say how much you can produce? So the first thing, and I keep on asking, I personally, through people that I knew as well, pressed the previous government when Carney was closed down to state in Parliament, right? And I have the answer record, I think, how much land there was available for agriculture from Carney. It was 70,000 acres. And I repeatedly ask every time I write about agriculture, I ask how much land is available. I'll bet you now it's not 5,000. It has just been desiccated. Okay? But we had 70,000 acres. That was the official statement from the government at the time, that the Carney land which was allocated for agriculture. Now it might not have all been agriculture, some may have been other things, but in the books it was agricultural land. So we could have had 70,000 acres. Nobody can tell me how much we have.
I know very well that you have been very eloquent in your discourse regarding this particular issue in the Parliament and in other places, where you have always been asking for the land use policy.
That's right.
You keep always asking, why do we take lands and convert them from arable lands to build homes or houses or factories or whatever? And recently in a discussion I had with Dr. Tiwari, I asked the question again, and he very affably said, well, we are almost there, in that they have put somebody to come up with the whole land use policy of the country.
Okay, that's very good. But let me tell you another thing that I've been knocking my head against stone wall for, right? And it's absolutely vital for a land use policy, from the agricultural point of view. We have a land capability system in Trinidad today, very detailed, excellent program, but it was based in the 60s on the American system. So that if a bit of land like Tucker Valley, or to some extent Orange Grove, those are only available sizable areas of good land in the inverted commas. If a land is to be classified as grade 1, it has to be able to grow all crops well.
I agree.
Okay. Now, it may be an excellent soil for cocoa, and it should be class 1 for cocoa, right? But you're going to go down to class 6, and the planner is going to say put it in housing. So we need to redo our land, and I knock my head against the stone wall.
I'm hearing you.
The person to do it is Professor Nazir Ahmad, and I keep on, and I know it hasn't been done because I would have heard it from Nazir. Nazir Ahmad, myself, and Professor Wilson went to see a former Minister of Agriculture, the last government, about this. Had all his experts there. He listened to us and so on. Nothing was done. Until we redo our land capability survey, we're going to make tremendous mistakes.
Use great land
in the land use plan.
Yeah, for the wrong reason.
That policy is going to be flawed if we don't start with a change in the land capability.
And I think the important thing is utilization of the land. Although it is graded a particular thing, it's good for a particular crop.
Precisely.
But they're not telling you that.
Precisely.
And it's graded there as if though it's land that is abandoned.
Precisely.
The only thing you could do with it is put concrete.
Precisely.
I understand.
And more than that, with new technology, there are land that before you would have said was
no good, yeah, but with new fertilization.
Precisely.
I heard you speak about that, and I agree with you.
Let's take the clay soils.
Yeah.
Okay? The big problem with clay soil is impeded drainage.
Right.
The heavy clay in the water doesn't go through.
Right.
We have one farm in Trinidad, the Sugarcane Peat Center, in which we have internal drainage. And the Canadians, McGill University, came down in Trinidad and worked with UWI, and they lay these pipes. I think they use it for the Tech as well. They have a tractor which digs a furrow and a big tube of plastic.
Goes underground.
Yes, goes underground. Right. That was done in the 80s. So that system at Sugarcane Peat Center is still working after 20 years. The original drain is laid now. And they got tremendous yield in sugarcane for other reasons as well, but that soil is very poor soil.
Yeah, very poor soil.
Terrible case. That's right. And yet they do it well with it because of drainage. Now, when we had the sugar rationalization report, which I chaired, and they will remember, in the late 70s, one of our important recommendations was that we should study the management of our clay soils. And that really meant internal drainage, not just surface drainage. Yeah. Never does.
But then again, the clay situation is very intense. I mean, there are so many things that could happen with clay. From the point of view of an industrialization plan, they have just taken the thing and planted houses on it, so to speak. We could never use the soil again for anything else.
That's the point. Once you build, you won't have it again. Yeah. The thing about houses is that if you're in a small island, a small landscape, and you're thinking of any way of a significant proportion of food production, agricultural production, you have to decide whether you're going into terraced houses, what they call terraced houses.
Yeah.
In developed countries, the houses are built next to each other in a row, and you have a little garden in the front and a little garden in the right, with a common wall between each house, and it goes up, so it's a two-story.
Well, I see Mrs. Obama speaking about that in her new book, because she has taken a very strong feeling towards home gardens.
Yes.
And she has done a lot of work in the Americas. It's something I always worried about the government of Trinidad and Tobago in building homes. How come they never ever thought about planting fruit trees in each of these homes based on the soil types in the various areas, and putting a small industry to accommodate the processing of that will lend income generating for that community to taking care of the maintenance of the playgrounds and the this and the that and the other, right? But again, we come back full circle that we could definitely, beyond any reasonable doubt, say that the failure in agriculture, like in a lot of the other things in this country, emanates from the poor planning processes, and also emanates from the discretion that is left in the totalitarian leader, who, when they get to the point of no return, takes the decision to do the things they think is best without considering what they went there for in the first place, which is to take care of the population in its major concerns and to provide for them in a meaningful way for long-term or longevity.
Except that I would not put it down to one person. Because other people could do their part as well.
I hear you.
And maximum leaders only become maximum because other people let them in.
I hear you.
So if they were really held down, if there was strong opposition within, I'm not talking about in the population.
No,
within
the society of power brokers or dealers, or people who make the decisions.
That's right.
I mean, I would look at the agriculture. I think that your information shared with the population today, especially when we go back to McGill University, we go back to the cocoa, we go back to the man, we go back to the land planning, we go back to the drainage, we go back to the soil types, we go back to the reclassifications. I think there's a lot of information in there that if this government or governments to come in the future does not really take this piece of historical information that we're presenting here today in good stead, they would have suffered the population of the future significantly.
We don't have an institutional memory, really. The memory resides in individuals. It should be part of the institution.
Let me touch on one other crop before we leave agriculture to go to education. Breadfruit. Why haven't we done more with breadfruit in Trinidad?
Well, again, that's something that I keep complaining about. The University of the West Indies, UWI in Augusta, send somebody to the Far East and introduce, I don't know, let's say 50, I don't know how many varieties, a large range of varieties. Those varieties still sit at the field station. They haven't been disseminated. Now they're doing research, but you can't do research for 10, 20 years. At some stage you have to move. Let's move out these varieties. And when they go out, some of them won't do well, and so you'll abandon those and some of the rest. Those varieties should have been multiplied up and distributed widely, certainly in Trinidad, but in Trinidad and the other islands as well.
Breadfruit seems that it's like the turtleback, like the leatherback. It's going to get into extinction in a not too distant future.
Well, we have the material that's in Augusta, and there's a wide range of material there.
Because the English has now gone on a big plan of putting away seeds for generation next, in that they have started to take seeds from every single plant and put it into a cold room and lock it up and say, well, if we get X day, we still have something to go back to.
Well,
I mean, Trinidad and Tobago hasn't done that yet.
I'll tell you how different Trinidad and Tobago. You know couscous yam?
Yeah.
Which I love, but you can't get to buy. Go to the market, you can't get it. We've had 2 research efforts on couscous yam. One in the government, Stowe Henry, one in the University of Vernon Royce. And they collected a lot of varieties from Trinidad. They then produced the couscous yam seeds, so you can produce material from seeds. So when you take the seeds and grow it, you get a range of different types. So they developed 2 separate collections in Trinidad of couscous yam. Not one variety from those collections exists today, because we don't preserve. Right? Now we should have been doing just what you say. I don't know how long the viability of the seed of couscous yam is, but you can preserve it on tissue culture. All the cassava varieties in Seattle are produced in test tubes in the lab. So we could have done that here as well.
Well, it brings me to the final point on this. I know we said that before, but it just reminds me of one very famous thing that I like. I don't know how many people in Trinidad know about it, but Mami Sipo.
Yes.
When you think about Mami Sipo as a health food, I mean, I am blown to pieces to know that in Japan they have something of a similar nature called kaki, which is a premium price product. And we have Mami Sipo, maybe 100 trees in the country only, and nothing happens with it. And people don't understand the quality of energy coming out of that food.
And I must say, Minister Barrett has been trying to get the red fruit incidentally planted in the schools. So that's one approach that we can do.
Yeah, I mean as part of that.
Yeah, but when he wants to plant a breadfruit tree in every school in Trinidad.
But that'd be real good. That'd be real good. I mean, the Port of Spence City Corporation will come and ask me to cut down my breadfruit tree and tell them on my dead body. Well, I mean, agriculture leads to education.
Yes.
Education has to be the next tenant of I think, dissatisfaction in the country. We have spoken about the tertiary side of it, and we have spoken about the secondary side and the startup schools and primary. But there's a big problem facing the young children today, especially with this kind of power broking coming from the same sort of idealistic of the past, where guns take control and television shows this and that and the other. Is there a solution? I know that Professor Deosaran was trying in his own way to come up with a formidable plan. I see him fighting still in his capacity now as the police service chairman. But
we all have to try. We started, a group of us started what we call the Education Discussion Group, we've met for the last 6 years here in my living room. Now we moved to another member of the group who lives nearby, Lisa Ramsey. But we've had some very important people, mainly retirees, but people who have been principals of schools and in the ministry, CEOs in the ministry, so we all had as part of our group. We meet once a month. We left once a month for 6 years. And we come up with ideas. We go and see the ministers. We've seen about 3 ministers. I tell you, that's all very nice, but nothing else. We're doing that. You see, we suggest this. We're doing that. Ministry is doing that.
But nothing happened.
We set up a unit last week.
But
just set up a unit. No. I think myself that one of the big problems, speaking in general terms, one of the big problems with our education system is that we are bent on certification rather than education. So that the important thing to us
is a certificate.
Yes, and the news media play to that, and the parents. So if we come first in the world, we think we have a good education system. Never mind 30% are not being able to read or write. One has come first in the world in mathematics, so we have a fantastic education system.
Right.
And that really is the problem, because the whole thing is based not on whether you are a good citizen, but whether you have a bit of paper which says you came first in your
well, we could pass some of the blame onto that of parents like yourself and myself, because I'm sure when we were coming up, our kids, we wanted them to come first in class.
Yes, but we also wanted them to be educated. I mean, so perhaps I'm somewhat prejudiced because of where I went to school. QRC could not win an Island Scholarship for years. We had a science master, one of the best science masters, Benjamin J. Bedell, and he produced a number of people who became professors at UWI, but no Island Scholarships during his time, because he wasn't interested in the certification. What he was interested in was giving you a scientific education and making sure that at the end of the time you could think properly, right? And you could win an Island Scholarship. It was famous. So there was a period of 10 or 15 years where QRC never won any in science. They won in mathematics and all the rest of it. Because Benjamin Bedell was the master.
Have we spent enough time in the science part of our education syllabus?
I don't think so. And again, I think it has to be properly taught. It's very difficult. But I think that all countries now need to have a strong science base for your development. That is not to say that you should ignore the other sectors, but you must have a strong science base, and I'm not too sure that we do.
Our IT in Trinidad and Tobago is at a level that we could talk about it in any sense of satisfaction.
I'll be able to answer that question better in a week's time. Next Saturday coming, our education discussion group has 2 experts coming to talk to us about IT and education.
Because when you look at the world all over, one of the things you talked about in the whole education failure is kids leaving school without the ability to read and write. We hear them talking about mass media education programs. We see all these digital boards going up all over the country. And one wonders why we can't use some of those mediums as a mechanism for edification of the society.
Yeah, well, that's what we're going to talk about, as I say, in our group. Certainly, I don't think that just giving kids laptops
is going to solve the problem.
What you have to do is have the proper teachers, and then you have to have the material that goes into the laptop. The laptop is only a mechanism for the software.
It's dependent on the copybook page.
Yeah, the thing is the software, But often we have to start. We still have primary schools in which we have one long rectangular room separated by blackboards.
Correct.
When you go down and think a kid is here in this class, is here in the teacher in the next class. We still have that in many of our primary schools. And we talk about education, talk about computers and so on. You have to address the primitive things first. But yes, I agree with you that the IT is important. I think where you come to elitism, I think 20 years ago, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago, we should decide that this is the field to get into, and we should have made a deliberate effort to select people and train them properly in this area.
South
That's where I believe it. We should have selected people out and say, you have an aptitude, we're going to give you special scholarship, special attention, and this is it.
I recently interacted with some South Koreans, and this is one of the things they said to me, that in order for their society in the education level to go, they really went the research way.
Yeah.
They took administrative ideologies, motor cars, plasma screens, televisions, CRTs, and they copied it, which is the obvious thing you would do. And along the path of growth, they created intellectual capacity. Intellectual capacity created product. Product then came to market for research. Research then developed into, incubator. Incubator went into production. Production went into export. And that took the whole process of the whole arithmetic. In the Trinidad and Tobago model, we continue to operate in the whole same colonial methodology, which is hold on to what we have. We keep talking about wanting to get out of the colonial education, but we're still operating with all of the nuances and hoping to get a different result.
Right. We are assuming that it will happen. Yeah, but it won't happen. We have to set out to make it happen.
I don't think the infrastructure, the foundation, and would you agree that based on the 30% or 40% of unlearned people can't read, can't write, that they should come? I mean, I know there are remedial schools and all that, but that can't take care of the problem, because the problem has gotten to the level that's so bad that we need to possibly go into find another mechanism. If you had to address that, how you will address it?
But you see, even the efforts that are being made aren't supported. If you take, I think it's called ALTA, they do an excellent job.
Correct.
But they're scratching around for money.
I hear you.
Why don't we put look at the money we waste. We don't get I don't mind if we waste money. But when we waste money and other things are deprived of money, when you can't get drugs in the hospital and money is being wasted, that's a problem.
Or you have a stadium that you spend $1 billion on and you can't use it.
If everything else is going well,
that's okay.
You spend money with it. But
so there has to be a refocus and reprioritization again, because there should be some substantial decision made with regards to primary schools moving from the level of blackboards or separation to proper classrooms.
That's right.
And we should get to the point of analyzing and understanding where are we with our whole trust with reading and writing, and put the remedial thing in place in a massive kind of way to really get the education to the point of these young people, so that at least they don't pick up the gun.
Going back to the design of schools, we had this education discussion group, had a symposium last year on school and classroom design. We had architects in, we had education people in, we had an excellent thing. We did it in partnership with the School of Education at UWI. It was an excellent symposium. But of course, nobody wasn't doing the report. I'll tell you a simple thing that we've been present for. In Trinidad, there are, I won't say no, but let's say there are 2 schools. There are no schools in Trinidad today that have lunchrooms.
Lunchroom?
Just think of it. You think about it. Any school. Mary's College, QRC.
No lunchroom.
Primary school.
Eat on the side, eat on the desk.
Absolutely. But go to the United Kingdom or United States. No school in the United States does not have a lunchroom.
But as you say that, I remember going to visit the school in far east Trinidad, south Trinidad, Icacas.
Well, that's why I pulled back, because there may be 1 or 2 reasons.
Yes, and I remember saying that, but it was an open concept lunchroom. At least it was a start.
That's all right, but generally
there is none.
Yeah, we spoke to an architect who was designing 3 schools around Port Spain, Woodbrook Secondary, St. James, and 1 in Digger Market. And we asked him about that lunch. He said he had put it in and the ministry took it out to save money. Now we talk about etiquette, right? If you have lunch in an orderly manner, you're also under some supervision.
Disciplinary kind of.
Of course. They're talking now about teaching them etiquette. They made a contract with somebody to teach etiquette.
Pasha.
So have a lunchroom. That's where it starts.
I'm here with you.
That's absolutely where it starts.
We take all of these things as obvious nuances. Yeah. We don't pay no attention to the society.
We go abroad and you see it there as the norm. agriculture and the school nutrition program.
But Prof, you know what will happen with that? When we go and see those things pass through one ear, go through one ear, come through the eyes, and we don't see it. You see, because we are so accustomed seeing the way we see it in Trinidad. When we go there, we still don't see it. Now that you have made it, because even I overlooked that. And in the discourse, I remembered going to Ikakas and seeing you learn through and wondering whether any new designs, but then you said the architect is designing it and they're leaving it out. It really doesn't make no sense to have a philosophical position to talk about etiquette and all of this thing in school, but you don't have some of the cursory things that are required as a prerequisite to make the thing work.
So it'll be an academic.
It abandons.
It'll be an academic thing.
It'll
be an academic thing which they'll learn and they'll be able to write an exam about etiquette. But they won't affect their behavior.
No implementation, no enforcement, no mirroring of the thing. You can't see what you're doing.
And the linkage between agriculture and school nutrition program. Lloyd Best, I must say, this isn't originated me. I've supported it, but all the time I write about it. But Lloyd Best was first who drew attention to it. Again, if you go abroad, we had a sabbatical year in England, and our children went to school there with luxury. But they didn't go outside to get their meals.
Everything was indoors.
Absolutely. And you bought the lunch tickets at the beginning of the term. Right. And the kids just took one to school each day. Now, in Trinidad, we are given 4 kids. So you're pointing at children. This is a bad aspect of the school nutrition program. You're pointing at kids, look, you're a charity case, we're giving you a free meal. That should not be the case. Everybody should be eating.
It's not across the board.
Everybody. And the child who can't afford it, when he goes to the principal, when his parents go to the principal, they give him the lunch ticket free. Some have to pay, some get it free. So nobody knows who is paid or who is not paid. A simple thing like that. And you now have a much bigger market for your local agricultural produce.
True.
Because it's not just a proportion of ones who need a free meal. Everybody in the schools has to eat that meal. You teach them how to eat local and have good nutrition. Look at the obesity we have in the young thing. Because they're not getting it at school.
Wrong nutritional content.
They should have a good diet at least once a day.
The Americans have seen that and they're really taking a move at it. And as I say again, I come back to Mrs. Obama because she's taking a direct intervention regarding that children's situation.
I heard it on the BBC today, lunchtime. They were talking about the problem in the UK.
So if we look at the agricultural situation now, I mean, we look at the education system and we mirror the both of them. We see, we understand clearly that they interact, they have to live with one another. Where do we go with education now, bearing in mind that we know, one, we have a deficiency in reading and mathematics, if you want to call it that, writing, reading and numerics. We have a deficiency in the point of view that a lot of these kids who have come into the particular system come there just because they have to go to school, because they automatically move from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3. Pass, draw, win, fail, it makes no difference. We get to the stage where we know that we have to create another level because we have some excellent students inside there, whether we like it or not. In every part of the society it exists. And they are bundled into the general population. They cannot breed, so to speak. What would be your recommendation from the bottom to the top? How do we address this in the shortest space of time? And what is the shortest space of time in years?
Well, I look at the education system like medicine. I keep on saying this, and I think that the present Minister of Education is a doctor, so she should understand. In order to cure an ill patient, you first have to diagnose what is wrong.
Right.
Okay. Now the problem in individual schools in Trinidad varies. Correct. One school has this problem with the rooms, physical structure. Another school may have a good physical structure, but you have a poor principal. Right. And that's bringing the school down. Another one, you may have an excellent principal with the teachers. You don't have good teachers. So you need to treat each school as an individual, apart from your overall policy for all the schools, which must be the correct policy. Right. Even when you do that, you still come down to the individual school. Okay. Now in the UK, the way that they address this is that they have a system of inspection. It's called they have a separate division in the Ministry of Education called Ofsted, Office for Standards in Education. Okay. Abbreviated Ofsted. And they have trained professional inspectors. Not the supervisor who was a principal of a primary school last week and will inspect their school next week without any training. Right. They have these inspectors who are trained, they're certified, right? You have to have a license to be an inspector. And once in every 5 years in the United Kingdom, about a dozen inspectors go into a school and spend a week, and they examine every aspect of the school. Physical infrastructure, the teaching and individual subjects. They go and sit down in the classrooms, they listen to the teachers teaching, they talk to the students to see what the student problems are, they talk to parents to find out what the problems are, they talk to the principal, of course, and they examine their homework books. The one report that I saw, the inspector written, this teacher just puts a tick and or an X and doesn't write what is wrong. How is the pupil to know what he's got wrong? Right. He's just wrong. You know, very detailed inspection. Once, at least in every 5 years. If a school is doing poorly, they do it more frequently than that. And this is what we need: an independent external inspector to inform the Ministry of Education and the school boards, Catholic, Anglican, whatever, Muslim, to inform the school board as to what are the problems in their individual schools. Now, teachers may not like it because they don't put in their reports. Oh, by the way, those reports are immediately posted on the internet.
Okay.
So any school, you can go on any school in the United Kingdom, hundreds of schools. You can go up and there's the Northeast District, you put Northeast District. If you know the name of the school or you know the town it's in and so on, and you can get that report. Now they don't. Right. Now they don't say teacher in English is bad.
No.
But they say the teacher in English is bad. Or is deficient. They don't say bad. It needs correction in these areas.
There's been some controversy about the examination and the scoring of the test results. There have been people who have saying because of the success of people in particular schools, they're saying that it's the correcting of the papers is not correct.
That's not always a problem. Even in the United Kingdom, they had an issue on here in which the A-level results grades were too high, and they actually had to have an investigation, and they brought down some of the grades. So that's the universal problem. But I don't think that is, on the whole, a very serious problem. I think that what happens is that when a school starts doing good, the parents tend to
want to carry kids.
Yes, and so the parents who can afford it and so on give them extra lessons. So I wouldn't say that that is so much the
it's a problem. Okay. We talked about the economy, and you said that was going, as far as you're concerned, good, but it had this double-edged sword because, and we have proven that in the discussion today, and money that should have really been used for Alta hasn't been used there, but it's been used to build a stadium. And as we talk today, the same thing continues to coexist. The cohabitation of that is there. The attitude and abilities of those who are now there to transform that has not shown any significant difference. They're still operating in the old paradigm. They're speaking a language on one side, but the actions on the next side are totally different. It's opposite. So we'll never get anywhere if we continue to operate like this. The biggest problem with the economy is diversification. The biggest problem with diversification is the education. The biggest problem with the education is making sure the investment is put into it in the rightful manner, at the rightful time, with a kind of clear understanding that we want to achieve an objective, and the objective is diversification of the industrialization policy. It is clear that agriculture holds a very strong role in the economic revolution of Trinidad and Tobago in the future, from a point of view of health, nation building, self-sufficing in food, and all the other rudimentary things that you could think about. But when we look at the philosophical guys who are there as economists, and we see how they deal with money, they don't deal with money like you and I are talking today. They deal with they deal with money from a political point of view. They deal with money for votes. They deal with money for power. They deal with money for getting back into office. They don't really deal with the money from the point of view of the social well-being, of the creation of a developed society. I haven't seen any leader from the time I have been around watching from the outside have taken a kind of stand with regards to saying, no matter what happens, I'm not changing my course. Now, where do you see the economics, bearing in mind that we have a petrol-based industry that has a guaranteed kind of, or a quasi-guaranteed kind of timeline, say 15, 20 years, unless we make some significant fines, which doesn't seem very possible, especially when you look at the depths that they have to go to now. You think we are catching this thing at the right? Do you think we are getting on the crust of the wave, or the wave has passed us?
Well, I don't think it's ever too late, because sometimes you have to do it. What will happen is that you'll be forced to do it when you have no money. So you'll have to do it then, and you will do it. I mean, Barbados does a lot of things because they have no money. They have to do it. They have to have a private tourist trade, otherwise they wouldn't survive. So eventually I think you'll be forced to do it. But it's that much easier and more likely to be successful if you start while you still have some resources. I would say that the detailed 5-year plans, to my point of view, should be at least re-examined. Because if you finish the plan within a term, then it's going over into the next term. And so the next government that's coming in, if it wants to alter that plan drastically, has to explain to the population why it's altering it. Now, because you find the plans now, for example, the agriculture plan is 2012 to 2015. It doesn't go beyond 15. If it went from 2012 to 2017, then the next government coming in must either continue that plan or have good reason for changing course. So I would say the one thing that one should start doing is having the 5-year plans, but having them so spaced that they overlap, but they start in the middle of a government term.
I hear you. So now is a good time for the government, as they're now coming in the replanning position, to do a 5-year plan that will include 2 years of the next term.
Absolutely.
But you know, legislatively we have no control over that. From a point of view, as you have written in the constitutional products that you have put out, nothing mandates except the will of the leader. One would hope that the will of the leader would see the optimism.
Well, the more you can persuade the population that this is the thing to do, the more will they put pressure on the leaders to do it. And then the leaders will find that in order to get re-elected, they have to go in this direction. So it seems to me that one really, perhaps the only way to address it is to start with the population, trying to mix the population.
Do you think that Trinidad and Tobago, from a point of view of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, from what you have known about it and based on how you have written, that we have utilized that fund to maximize the benefits?
We didn't put half of what we should have put into it. What Norway did, they didn't start spending the money for some years, and they put it into their fund. So their income from the fund now matches the income from the oil, and that's what we should have done. We should have tightened our belt for 5 years after the boom started, and only start spending 5 years after.
The
amount of money we put into the fund is small, and there should have been 2 funds. A heritage fund is different to a stabilization fund. In fact, I think since there's 3 funds. One for development, one for the years when you aren't getting so much income and you take money out of it. But the heritage fund you don't touch. That's
a grow continuously.
That's what it's called, that's heritage.
As a mutual fund, if you want to call it that.
That's right.
Well, it's something that I think they have to re-examine. I think that the whole method of allocation of money has not been ascertained as per revenue and expenditure, and we have not been able or continue not to live within a paradigm or within a frame.
They're going to have to alter the law, because the way it is said is only when you have a surplus of any money goes into the fund.
Yeah, that's what it says.
I understand it, but it has to be structured.
And depends on where they peg the oil. I mean, at this stage with the oil peg where it is, there will be a surplus, which worried me the other day, because the minister is now asking for $200-something million in the extended amount of money to go into the fund.
Well, there'll be no surplus, because they'll spend the extra money that comes in from the before it gets to the end of the year.
Prof, as we wind up today, I want to just find out from you, in your view, tell me what you think is 5 things Trinidad and Tobago did right in the 50 years.
Well, I think we did right in the way that we developed the oil industry, the petroleum industry, and the way they developed the products from petroleum. That is the point thesis proven. I think we did that extremely well. I think the expansion in the education system was important, and we did it, and that had to be done. I think that unfortunately we could have done it a bit differently, but I think that was useful. I suppose that by and large, you see, if you asked me that question 10 years ago, I'd give you a different answer. I would say that 10 years ago we had been able to raise the level of the population, the people at the lower income groups, and keep the higher income groups at a certain level, right? So there was less of a gap. Now what has happened is that the people who have money are sort of in here. So the gap is widening in every part of the world. Well, not just in that.
But the monetary gap.
Yes, that's a big problem in very parts of the world, why people are demonstrating and so on. So the gap is getting wider and wider. So I think that managing to handle it. But, I always talk about taxation. And a lot of people won't agree with me that we have one of the lowest tax rates in tax situation, 25%. Now, that's supposed to encourage investment, but the investment doesn't occur. So my question is, and I've never got a sensible answer to this, why not charge 50%? And if you invest, you get a rebate of 25%. So you get it when you invest. You don't give them the money and with the hope that like Reagan and Thatcher and so on the theory that if you give people money in the public pockets, they'll invest. When they invest, give them back the money. Right? So we don't do that. So low taxation rates and no investment. That's our problem now. And I don't see that you can get out of it by spending, by building roads and so on. I'm not saying you mustn't build roads. I don't misunderstand. The highway may be extremely important. But I don't think that in itself is going to get the economy moving.
That wouldn't get the economy
because what will happen is that more people have in their pockets from that sort of activity, the more they'll buy luxury goods which have to be imported. So you get a greater strain on your foreign exchange. And as soon as the oil industry can't supply the dollars,
trouble.
Even before the actual amount of money, if the exchange is not available, it's all running themselves.
And if you look at the situation of 5 things that went wrong.
Well, I would say one, the neglect of agriculture. I think that was a bad mistake. That's a different thing. And I think we should have done the education differently. And that is absolutely vital. Getting the education system right and teaching people to think. That has been our problem. Our kids are very good at passing exams and doing well and so on, academically. But they really don't emphasize thinking.
Cram institutions.
That's right. And our institutions don't bring out that in people. I'll give you an example. When I went to the UK on sabbatical, and my second son hadn't gone into secondary school yet. So he went into secondary school for the first time in the UK. And when he came back out and went to college, I won't mention the name of the college. A couple of weeks he came to me and said, "But Daddy, this teaching is so different here." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "But in England we participated in the lesson. Here if you say anything, the master tells you to shut up, or the other boys laugh at you. So we're not creating, we're not getting the kids." When I went, my second son teaches in the same boy teaches. I think that's why he went in teaching, by the way. He's so horrified with the rest of the teachers. He teaches school in the UK. He was born in England. Now, when I went in his classroom, I was absolutely amazed. They don't have rows of chairs and a blackboard at one end. They have tables, and the kids are sitting facing each other in the tables.
I hear you.
Right? And at the end of the lesson, they're discussing what he has told them amongst themselves. Completely different approach,
Which is important, I think, we have to rethink our whole approach to some of the things we're doing in Trinidad and Tobago. Again, I said it that we continue to be stuck in this colonial methodology. Although there's some very good things came out of the colonialism. But we haven't really transcended.
That's right.
We are only talking about transcendence.
Whereas the colonial masters have changed their system. We are left with their own system. They have changed.
And they are changing.
Yes,
correct.
Absolutely.
Under the criminal system, as we wind up, what do you think happened? What went wrong with the law? Why do the people of Trinidad and Tobago break the law? I mean, there's so much things. I heard the Chief Justice the other day talking very, very strongly about, judges have to get more involved, and I'm wondering whether he understood what he said, because
I suppose I go back to school again. I think something again went wrong in school, and I'm not in favor of corporal punishment. I don't think that I believe that the best control of discipline is self-discipline.
I agree.
So you have more police on the roads, but eventually there's going to be a time when you're not going to need encyclopedia, and you must still not go on. So you yourself must decide to do it. Self-discipline. External discipline you need, but more important is the self-discipline. And I think that's what, for some reason, we haven't taught in our schools.
But the crime situation seems to really not be under any kind of conviction of control.
Well, I think
society seems to be still wondering what they're doing.
We keep on talking about two approaches. One is the immediate thing of policing.
Right.
That's important. You have to control the crime as it is now, and then you have to look at the social issues.
Okay.
And that's 10 years before you see the result.
True.
But because we want the result this week, or this month, or this year, because we won't get elected if we don't have the result, we concentrate only on the immediate things and not going back to say, look, when we were talking about this in the year 2000, those kids were in primary school, the one who shooting each other now. Yeah. They were 9 years old, now they're 19.
True.
So if we had started in the year 2000, we could have been affecting the ones that are now 19.
True. So, which is why I was happy to see what the Prime Minister did. But we've spoken about that already, and it doesn't make sense if the classrooms don't have the right ambience, if the whole situation is not structured to make you get into environmental learning. If you're feeling as if you know, I sit down by my desk and take out my little bag of food and I'm wondering if I'll be embarrassed because he come in with steak and fries and I eating a piece of roti. I don't know. They might laugh at me and make jokes as well as, you know, if we're in an environment where everybody is eating and lunch is served or breakfast is served as a methodology towards, you know, changing.
You know, a thing that happens in the school, sad as it may seem, and this, of course, all the kids in the school know. In some schools, the teachers eat the lunches as well.
That's what it is.
And you don't, the kids know that. The kids learn by example, you know.
Yeah.
What you tell them in the classroom is one thing, but what they see you doing is something completely.
Well, you know, the old people say, well, monkey see, monkey do.
Yes.
So we can't change that.
Yeah.
Prof, as we wind up, what's your Independence 50th anniversary message? What would you wish to see happen for Trinidad and Tobago as we move forward?
I would like to see that we I was very impressed by an article written by one of the senior American economists who's deceased now, John Galbraith, and he wrote an article in which he said the good society has no underclass.
Good society has no underclass.
The good society has no underclass, and that's what I think our objective should be. We should be aiming for the good society, and therefore we should have no underclass. We don't solve poverty by giving people
no, you can't solve it.
We solve poverty by giving them proven good. So yes, we should address poverty, but all that we are doing for poverty, as far as I can see,
it's plaster on the so.
That's right.
Short term fix.
And you have to keep on doing it forever.
Prof, I want to thank you. I want to wish you all the best as we look towards the 51st anniversary of the independence. I know we are celebrating the 50th. I mean, nobody knows where life will carry us. I am happy that I was able to do this during your lifetime. This is going to go down in the records, the annals of history, because I think people have to reflect. As a young man growing up, I never paid any attention to history. I never thought of the importance of it. But as I grew older, I got more intellectually smart, if I should say, to understand that history really is something you must be able to reflect on in order for you to understand where you went wrong, where you went right, and what you need to do in order not to make the same mistakes that your foreparents made. There's a lot of great information that you've shared with the country today. I want to thank you on behalf of the people of Trinidad and Tobago for your time, and I want to say all the best to you in health and everything else, no matter how much age we get. The point is, we have to do what we have to do when we have to do it.
Well, thank you for letting me sermonize. I hope this will be of some interest.
I think it's going to be of great interest to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I'll get you a copy of this.
Thank you.
Which after it is produced for your own history and for your own library.